The White Snake. Long ago, there lived a king who was famous throughout the land for his wisdom. There seemed to be nothing he did not know, as if the wind itself whispered the most secret news into his ears. The king had a strange habit. Every day after lunch, when the table had been cleared and no one else was present, a trusted servant would bring him a covered bowl. Even the servant did not know what was inside. No one was allowed to see it, because the king always waited until he was completely alone before opening the bowl and eating its contents. One day, the servant's curiosity grew too strong. While carrying the bowl, he secretly took it to his room, locked the door, and lifted the lid. Inside was a white snake. Unable to resist, he cut off a small piece and tasted it. The moment it touched his tongue, he heard strange murmuring voices outside the window. Listening closely, he realized that sparrows were talking to one another, sharing stories of what they had seen in the fields and forests. From that moment on, he understood the language of animals. That very day, the queen lost her most beautiful ring. Because the servant moved freely around the palace, she suspected him of stealing it. The king summoned the servant, scolded him harshly, and declared that if the thief was not found by the next morning, the servant would be punished as the culprit. The servant pleaded his innocence, but it was useless. He was driven out in disgrace. Terrified, he wandered into the courtyard, thinking desperately of a way to escape his fate. There, he saw a group of ducks sitting by the water, preening their feathers and chatting noisily. He stopped to listen. One duck complained angrily, "My stomach feels terribly uncomfortable. In my hurry this morning, I swallowed a ring that fell beneath the queen's window." The servant immediately caught that duck and took it to the kitchen, saying, "Please cook this duck, it's grown very fat." When the duck was cut open, the queen's ring was found in its gizzard. The servant was cleared of all suspicion. The king wished to reward him and offered him the highest position in the kingdom. But the young servant refused. Tired of palace life, he asked only for a horse and some money to travel the world. One day, while traveling, he came upon a pond where 3 fish were trapped among reeds, barely alive. Though people say fish cannot speak, he clearly heard them lament their fate. Moved by kindness, he dismounted and freed them. The fish joyfully splashed and said, "Thank you, kind savior. One day we will repay you." He continued on his journey. Soon, he heard voices beneath his feet and realized it was the ant queen complaining, "If only humans were more careful. That foolish horse is about to trample my people." The young man quickly guided his horse away. The ant queen said, "Thank you. We will repay you." Later, in a forest, he saw a pair of ravens pushing their young out of the nest, shouting that they could no longer feed them. The young ravens lay helpless on the ground, unable to fly. Out of pity, the young man killed his horse to feed them. After eating, the ravens cried, "Thank you. We will repay you." Now on foot, he eventually reached a large town, where people were gathered in great excitement. A royal messenger announced that the princess would choose a husband. However, any suitor must complete dangerous tasks, and those who failed would lose their lives. Many had already tried and died. Captivated by the princess's beauty, the young man stepped forward despite the danger. The king ordered him to retrieve a golden ring thrown into the sea, warning that if he returned empty-handed, he would be drowned. As the young man stood alone by the shore, 3 fish appeared, the very ones he had saved. One placed a clam at his feet. Inside it was the golden ring. Overjoyed, he presented it to the king. Still, the proud princess demanded a second task. She scattered 10 sacks of millet in the garden and said, "By sunrise, you must collect every single grain." The young man sat hopelessly, awaiting death. At dawn, however, the millet was neatly gathered. The ant queen and her countless ants had worked all night. Yet the princess demanded a third task, the apple of immortality. With no idea where to find it, the young man set out in despair. One night in a forest, a golden apple suddenly fell into his hands. 3 ravens appeared and said, "We are the ravens you once saved. We traveled to the edge of the world to bring you this apple." The young man presented the apple to the princess. She could no longer refuse. They shared the apple together, and love filled her heart. The two lived happily together for the rest of their lives. Lessons from the story. Kindness is rewarded. Though only a humble servant, the hero's kindness and compassion brought him great rewards. Gratitude. The animals showed deep gratitude and repaid the help they once received. Do not judge by appearances. True worth lies not in status or appearance, but in character and inner goodness.